October 26, 1998. For the fourth night in a row, Tegucigalpa endures blaring storm alerts. After days of steady rain and routine warnings, few imagined disaster. Offshore, a Category 5 hurricane turned stationary, unleashing more water in 5 days than most cities see in a year. Warnings were accurate, yet thousands would never hear them. Why did Hurricane Mitch become the deadliest Atlantic storm in modern memory? And what failed when it mattered most? At 2:47 in the morning, Tegucigalpa is wide awake, not with panic, but with a dull sense of routine. Rain presses against tin roofs. Sirens echo once more through narrow streets. For the fourth consecutive night, the city's civil defense system blares warnings into the darkness. Yet, in most homes, the broadcast is met with resignation. Some families pull blankets tighter, others turn up radios to drown out the sound. The alerts have become as familiar as the rain itself. Maria, a school teacher in a hillside neighborhood, listens from her kitchen table. She has counted the warnings, watched the water creep across her patio, and kept her children home from school. But the river below has always risen and receded, and the city has learned to wait out storms. In her notebook, she writes the date and time, another entry in a growing list. Outside, the streets glisten under streetlights, puddles form in low spots. The air is thick, heavy with the smell of wet earth. By now, many residents move through their routines with practiced caution. Sandbags line doorways. Neighbors check drains and sweep mud from stoops. The rain is steady, but not violent. For most, the sense of urgency has faded. Each new alert blends into the last, and the city's attention drifts. Few imagine that the real danger is not the wind or the rain they can see, but something building quietly just beyond their reach. Hurricane Mitch did not roar ashore in a single violent rush. Instead, it hovered just off the northern coast of Honduras, rotating in place for nearly 2 full days. Meteorological records show Mitch remained almost stationary about 30 miles from land for 48 hours, a rare and dangerous pattern. At its peak, the storm registered sustained winds of 180 miles per hour, making it the strongest Atlantic hurricane ever recorded in October. Yet, for much of Central America, the winds themselves would not be the main source of destruction. The stalled motion of the hurricane created a unique hazard profile. Unlike hurricanes that race inland and dissipate, Mitch's slow progress allowed dense bands of rain to pass repeatedly over the same regions. Each hour the storm lingered, the rainfall intensified, saturating soils and filling river basins far beyond their limits. Atmospheric scientists noted that the storm's core, while still powerful, began to lose some wind speed as it spun in place, but the rainfall did not relent. Instead, the stationary system squeezed moisture from the warm Caribbean, converting it into relentless downpours. Forecast models at the time struggled with the storm's erratic path. Meteorologists warned that the greatest threat would come from water, not wind. The combination of a stalled hurricane and mountainous terrain set the stage for catastrophic flooding and landslides, a threat that would soon move from forecast charts to reality. Rainfall data from October 26th through November 1st tells a story of extremes. In just 5 days, parts of Honduras and Nicaragua received as much as 75 inches of rain, more than many regions see in a full year. Meteorologists at the National Hurricane Center tracked the storm's stalled position and issued advisories warning of catastrophic flooding and mudslides. Those warnings were transmitted through government channels and international broadcasts days in advance. They cited specific threats: river basins pushed past capacity, slopes at risk of collapse, and urban floodwaters likely to rise beyond living memory. Yet, as the rain intensified, the lines of communications began to fracture. Power failures swept through both countries as transformers shorted and substations flooded. Within hours, many radio and television stations fell silent. By October 29th, widespread outages meant that centralized warning systems relied upon in cities and rural districts alike were crippled. The very infrastructure designed to carry urgent messages was itself overwhelmed by the storm. On the ground, the gap between forecast and reach grew wider. Technical teams continued to issue precise advisories, but the ability to deliver those alerts faltered. In some areas, warnings never reached the people most at risk. Elsewhere, the same messages repeated on battery radios, with growing uncertainty about what remained relevant. The rain did not pause for these breakdowns. It pressed on, filling rivers, saturating hillsides, and setting in motion the next phase of disaster. Communications failed before the floodwaters did, and that failure turned accurate forecasts into signals lost. In the town of Pozoltega, Nicaragua, a civil defense official received warnings over a ham radio as the rain intensified. With regular channels silent, he relayed urgent messages, prompting neighbors to gather and move uphill. Around 800 people left their homes near the base of Casita volcano, following word-of-mouth alerts instead of waiting for official vehicles that never arrived. Some found shelter on higher ground, while others hesitated or returned, uncertain whether the threat was real or just another false alarm. In Tegucigalpa, the story was different. The Choluteca River, swollen by days of unbroken rain, crested nearly 39 feet above its normal level. Bridges built in the 1930s, lifelines for the capital, collapsed into the torrent, severing the city into isolated islands. Thousands remained trapped in neighborhoods below the levees, unable to leave as roads disappeared and fuel ran out. For many, there was nowhere to go. One survivor later described clinging to a refrigerator for hours as the current swept through her home, carrying away walls, furniture, and memories in the muddy flow. Above the chaos, helicopter pilots, some local and others from arriving aid missions, flew 40 or more sorties over 3 days, pulling families from rooftops and battered buildings. Every flight was a gamble, with fuel in short supply and no safe place to land. On the ground, the scale of loss became clearer. 70% of Honduras's crops were destroyed. More than 150 bridges collapsed. Water supplies for 1.4 million people were left contaminated. The difference between survival and tragedy often came down to a single decision: a working radio or the chance arrival of a rescue team. At 3:15 in the afternoon on October 30th, the saturated northern slope of Casita volcano gave way. Days of relentless rain had forced water deep into fractured volcanic rock, raising pore pressure until the ground could no longer hold. Without warning, a mass of earth, estimated at 90 million cubic feet, liquefied and broke free. The initial collapse began as a rock slide, but it quickly transformed into a hyper-concentrated flow, mixing boulders, trees, and soil into a single, unstoppable surge. Gravity pulled the lahar downslope at speeds approaching 40 miles per hour. Within moments, the flow accelerated, carving a path through gullies and low-lying fields. 4 villages stood directly in its path. The lahar reached them in less than 11 minutes, leaving no time for escape. This was not a slow inundation, but a sudden, violent event. Mechanics driven by rainfall, terrain, and the physics of saturated earth. The physical process was complete in minutes. The human impact was just beginning. In the aftermath, the numbers reveal the depth of loss. Nearly 2,000 people perished in the lahar that swept down Casita volcano, most not by drowning, but by the force of mud and debris moving faster than any person could run. Forensic reports catalog blunt force trauma as the primary cause of death, a detail that separates this disaster from more familiar flood tragedies. Across Central America, the final death toll remains uncertain. Official counts list just over 11,000, but missing persons and destroyed census records push estimates as high as 18,000. In Honduras and Nicaragua, entire villages vanished from the map. The economic toll reached $6 billion, stripping away 80% of both countries' combined annual output. Crops, roads, homes, and water systems lay in ruins. By every measure, lives lost, communities erased, and livelihoods destroyed, Mitch stands as the deadliest Atlantic hurricane since the 18th century, a catastrophe that left scars still visible on the land and its people. Today, more than half the world's population lives in flood-prone regions where warning systems still rely on fragile infrastructure. Accurate forecasts mean little if the message never arrives. Disaster doesn't wait for technology to catch up. It demands we rethink what it means to be prepared. Stay vigilant.